Mr. Taiwo Udele joins us next. He's the head of tax and regulatory services for PWC. Thank you for coming on this morning.
My pleasure.
From that report, I mean, someone watching it will just think, oh dear, they're saying, tighten your belts, we're coming. But then they have their target set at 4.9 trillion. And they've given the breakdown, custom and excise, VAT, CIT, and looking at all of those, how do you see them achieving this target of theirs?
4.9 trillion is not a lot for the size of our economy. But because we haven't been paying taxes in the past, it looks like a very big target. If you convert that to USD, even if you use the official rate, it's less than $25 billion for a country of 180 million people. I was actually at the strategy session as well.
Okay.
So we went into more details. We found out that there's a lot of non-compliance in Nigeria. So even at the FCT there, where you have the headquarters of the FRS, one of the data that we looked at was about 21,000 people or businesses registered for VAT, and only 1,000 were filing returns. So you have 20,000 out of 21 that are not even filing. And you can imagine the number of businesses that are not even registered.
Now, they're assuming that those that are not filing are doing well, but they are not filing.
Yeah, you see, by law, you should even file. So we know whether you're doing well or whether you're not doing well. Because if you don't file, just because you think you're not doing well, then we can't tell between you and the person who is doing well but has defaulted in filing. And it's very unlikely that for a whole month you have no transaction at all. Because VAT is not about whether you made profit. It's about whether you had sales. Even if it was only one customer you had, by reason of the law, you should file your returns. So
the same thing with CIT.
Not for CIT, is an annual return you need to file. But it's not if it's better. We've got more than 90% of businesses are not filing returns even for CIT purposes. And if you look at also VAT and you look at customs, we import almost anything you can ever imagine. And yet, the amount of money we make from VAT and import duty is ridiculously low. And you just can't figure, the maths don't add up. Why import a lot and then you're not getting the taxes? So whether you're looking at VAT, whether you're looking at CIT, whether you're looking at capital gains tax, do you know that the capital gains tax that we generated last year was about 10 billion naira nationwide? You would imagine that that's probably the CGT on one property in Abuja. So how do you explain those stuff? So we just need to get a point now. Maybe it's good that the price of crude oil is where it is now, where our cost of production is almost about the same thing as how much we're selling it for. So technically, there's really nothing coming from, this debate by the National Assembly about whether it should be 38, it should be something. I don't think that's the debate anymore. It's no longer just that we have to worry about low oil prices. It should be no revenue at all. We should worry about from the oil sector. If you look at the 2016 budget, I still see over 200 billion that has been budgeted as revenue from Nigeria LNG. I'm not sure that we really figured out that gas is indexed to crude oil price. And if the price of crude oil is where it is, then it means that even gas is suffering the same fate or even worse. And somebody should start doing the maths that nothing might come from NLNG. So the gap might just be bigger than we think it is. But I'm very optimistic. It won't happen overnight. That Nigerians who haven't been paying tax will just suddenly start paying. But that process has to start now, and it has to be sustained.
But that's not what the Minister for National Planning thinks. I think it was only recently he spoke and he was talking about their projections. He was saying that all prices don't stay at one price. So whether or not they peg it at 38, we should know that the prices will fluctuate as the year wears on. I think that the Minister for State for Petroleum was also quoted as saying, even though I didn't quite get that quote right, but he said that even if oil was at $20 a barrel, we will still make profit.
That's interesting. I have a different perspective, though. We are where we are today because we failed to plan a few years back, so many years back. The direction in which the world is going, and the oil and gas sector in particular, is there was this quotation by the former oil minister of Saudi Arabia, and he said that the Stone Age did not end because there was no stone. The same way, the oil industry is likely to come to an end, not because there will be no oil, but because there will be alternatives. At the World Economic Forum in Davos, a couple of weeks back, they celebrated Denmark because they have achieved 40% of their energy need using wind, just wind, 40%, that's renewable. So the world is moving away from fossil fuel. Everybody is talking about clean energy and renewable, and the world is investing. On top of that, technology is helping people to gain efficiency. They're talking about cars now that use batteries. Now, and then supply of oil is increasing. Again, because of technology as well, you're able to do shale oil and gas. We are getting new entrants into the market. Meanwhile, global demand is falling. So we should stop deceiving ourselves. I'm not saying that the price of oil may not recover. It's likely to recover. But it won't be something that you can rely on for another 10, 20 years. We need to get a point where we say, what is Nigeria going to do if oil stops today? There are some fields we produce where the cost of production is about $7 or $10. So even at $20, some guys will still produce. But the average cost, which means the bulk of our production, is even at a cost that is more than $30. So as we speak now, there's a lot of shorting, and people are just saying, well, why should I spend $32 to produce what I sell for $30? And they're laying off people. So we can't live in deception and hope and pray that things will just get better by some magic.
Did they ever pop up in that session that, for instance, that opinion that people have that, look, we're not paying taxes because look at what we hear that public officials do with our money. Why should we keep paying tax and look at what they do with it at the end of the day?
Yeah, corruption is a big issue, very big one. It was in the news a few days back about an FRS director that was arrested for asking for a bribe of, I think, 5 million naira, and that's being investigated. We had a session for stakeholders recently, and people said, well, the reason why we don't want to pay tax is because we do not see the result of the ones we have paid before. And then you feel justified, even though that's not in the law. The law did not say that you have to receive social services before you can pay taxes. But so long as you can satisfy your conscience that what you're doing is right, people feel good doing it. Denmark is the least corrupt country in the world, and by some coincidence, also has the highest tax to GDP ratio. It's a country where you feel ashamed if you are late in paying your taxes. Not that you have defaulted. You can't say it out because you can see the result of taxpayers' money at work. So we haven't been doing that in Nigeria. So you don't have social services for the taxes you pay. You hear of these big and bogus numbers on the pages of newspaper every day of money being stolen. Just this morning, there was the news about over 23,000 ghost workers that have been detected just because they didn't have BVN. Of course, if you're not a human being, you don't have BVN. We can't do biometric for you. But some guys have been collecting those money. So we can't say until we see the social services and infrastructure before we start paying, because they also need the money to provide social services. So my appeal would be, let's start paying. It's tough, it's difficult. And once we start paying, we hold government accountable, and that way we can see the results.